chosen one. There is a reason your wealth feels closer than ever. And there is a reason you are here right now, at this exact moment, listening to these specific words. Something has shifted in the atmosphere of your life. You may not be able to point to external evidence yet. Your bank account may look the same as it did last month. Your circumstances may appear unchanged to anyone watching from the outside, but you feel it. You feel it in your chest. You feel it in your bones. You feel it in places that don't have language. Something is approaching, something is forming, something that was once far away now feels imminent, like a storm you can smell before you see the clouds, like warmth you can sense before the sun breaks through. This feeling is not wishful thinking. This is not optimism trying to convince you of something that isn't real. This is not your mind playing tricks on you because you've been waiting so long. What you are sensing is accurate. What you are perceiving is true. Your spirit has detected something that your natural eyes cannot yet observe, and that detection is not random. Chosen one, you didn't arrive at this message by accident. This moment has been arranged by heaven with precision. Among all the content you could have encountered today, among all the voices competing for your attention, you landed here. And you landed here because what you've been feeling needs to be confirmed. What you've been sensing needs to be validated. What you've been quietly wondering needs to be spoken out loud so that faith can anchor it. I see you. I see the version of you that has been carrying this quiet expectation, almost afraid to name it because naming it felt dangerous, almost afraid to believe it because believing felt like setting yourself up for disappointment. I see the version of you that has started to hope again, but doesn't want to hope too loudly in case hope gets crushed one more time. But hear this clearly, what you feel is real. The closeness you sense is accurate. The shift you've detected in your spirit is not imagination, it is recognition, and recognition always precedes realization. Have you been asking yourself these questions recently? Perhaps in the quiet moments before sleep, or in the early hours before the world demands your attention. Why does it feel like something is about to change? Why does scarcity no longer feel permanent the way it once did? Why has my relationship with money started to shift? Not in my account yet, but in my mind, in my chest, in my expectations. Have you noticed that fear about finances doesn't grip you the way it used to? That worry about provision doesn't spiral the way it once did? That somewhere along the way, without a dramatic event to mark the transition, something inside you relaxed about wealth? Have you wondered why conversations about opportunity have started appearing more frequently? Why ideas that could generate income seem to arrive more often? Why resources you need seem to show up closer to when you need them, not always perfectly on time, but closer than before? Have you felt a strange confidence forming, a quiet certainty that what is meant for you will find you? Not arrogance, not entitlement, but a settled knowing that your season is shifting, that the waiting is accomplishing something, that provision is not as far away as it once seemed. Chosen one. These questions are not random. These observations are not coincidental. What you have been noticing in your own life is evidence. Evidence that something has already changed in the spiritual realm. Evidence that alignment is occurring beneath the surface. Evidence that the wealth you've prayed about, believed for, and waited for is now genuinely approaching. The feeling of closeness is not you tricking yourself into false hope. The feeling of closeness is your spirit accurately perceiving proximity. And proximity always comes before arrival. Hear this clearly. You are not here by accident. Heaven orchestrated this moment with precision that your natural mind cannot fully comprehend. Every decision that led you here, every click, every scroll, every moment of attention you've given was part of a divine arrangement designed to confirm what your spirit has already been sensing. Scripture reminds us in Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3 that the vision waits for its appointed time, it hastens toward its goal, and will not prove false, though it lingers. Wait for it, because it will certainly come and will not delay. You are standing at the edge of that appointed time now, not approaching it distantly. Standing at the edge of it, the lingering is ending, the certainty is arriving. What you have felt shifting inside you is not confusion, it is alignment. What feels like anticipation is actually recognition. Your spirit recognizes that the season is turning. Your spirit perceives that what was held back is now being released. Your spirit senses that the appointed time has arrived. A supernatural breakthrough is near. And with it comes elevation that you did not have to manufacture, restoration of things that were taken, delayed or denied, and a heaven-authorized wealth shift, specifically designed for this season of your life, not someone else's season, not someone else's template, yours. If you stay with this message until the end, you will understand why the closeness you feel is accurate. You will recognize what God has already been doing beneath the surface, and you will be positioned to receive what is being released without the anxiety that comes from not understanding the process. As you listen, chosen one, gently commit your heart. Subscribe so you remain connected to what heaven is releasing through this channel. Not as a favor to me, but as a decision for yourself. There will be more words like this, more instruction, more confirmation, more protection, and the connection only continues if you subscribe. Comment 777, along with the city or nation where you are watching from. Let that act become your declaration. A marker in the spiritual realm that says, I am ready to receive, I am positioned to remain, I am allowing the word of God to soak deeply into my spirit as this message unfolds. This is not performance, this is participation, and participation activates agreement. Agreement opens doors that observation keeps closed. Chosen one, let me explain why wealth feels closer to you now than it ever has before. Because understanding the why protects you from dismissing what you're sensing as mere emotion. Understanding the why anchors your faith in something more stable than fluctuating feelings. There is a difference between wanting wealth and sensing wealth approaching. Wanting is a function of desire. It lives in the mind. It can be generated by circumstance, by comparison, by lack. Everyone who has experienced financial pressure has wanted wealth. That wanting is common, that wanting is human, but what you're experiencing now is different. You're not just wanting anymore, you're sensing, you're perceiving proximity, you're detecting something in the atmosphere of your life that wasn't there before, and sensing is not a function of desire, sensing is a function of discernment. Discernment perceives what is real before it becomes visible. The reason wealth feels closer is because wealth is closer, not metaphorically, not motivationally, actually closer. The resources, the opportunities, the open doors, the aligned connections, they have moved from distant possibility to imminent probability. And your spirit is simply telling you the truth about what is happening. I've learned this through experience, not theory. There have been seasons in my life where I wanted provision desperately, but felt no sense of its approach. I could pray, believe, confess, and still feel like provision was 1,000 miles away. The wanting was intense, but the sensing was absent. But there have also been seasons where something shifted, the wanting quieted, the desperation calmed, and in its place a strange peace emerged, a knowing that didn't need to be worked up or convinced, a quiet certainty that what was needed was on its way. And every single time that shift occurred, manifestation followed. Not always immediately, not always in the form I expected, but always. The sensing preceded the seeing. The perceiving preceded the possessing. Chosen one, what you are experiencing now has that signature. The wanting has quieted, the desperation has calmed, and in its place there is a knowing. That knowing is not false hope, that knowing is accurate perception. The shift did not begin in your bank account. It did not begin in your career. It did not begin in external circumstances that anyone could observe. It began in you. It began when your relationship with money started changing internally, when fear of lack started losing its grip, when worry about provision stopped spiraling the way it once did. These internal shifts are not random psychological changes, they are spiritual preparation. Heaven prepares the vessel before it fills the vessel. Heaven changes the receiver before it releases what is to be received. And you have been changing, quietly, steadily, unmistakably. When God prepares to elevate someone financially, the first thing he does is change their internal relationship with wealth. He removes the desperation that distorts decisions. He heals the wounds that would cause sabotage. He establishes the peace that allows stewardship instead of survival. That work has been happening in you, and it is nearing completion. The closeness you feel is the closeness of completion. The preparation phase is ending. The release phase is beginning. Let me help you recognize the signs that confirm what you've been sensing. Because signs exist not to create faith, but to anchor it. Signs give your mind evidence for what your spirit already knows. One of the first signs is a change in how you relate to money mentally. You may have noticed that financial thoughts no longer carry the same weight of anxiety they once did. The fear hasn't disappeared completely, perhaps, but it has diminished. It has lost authority. It no longer controls your decisions or dominates your mental space the way it used to. This shift is not denial. It is not pretending you don't have financial needs. It is something deeper. It is your nervous system learning to trust in ways that override the old patterns of panic. When your body begins to relax around money, it is because your spirit has received something your mind hasn't fully processed yet. Another sign is the decrease of urgency paired with the increase of clarity. In earlier seasons, you may have felt urgent about provision, but unclear about direction. You knew you needed more, but didn't know how more would come. That urgency without clarity creates frantic energy. It produces movement without progress. But now something has shifted. The urgency has softened, not because you've given up, but because something has settled. And in that softening, clarity has emerged. Ideas that make sense, directions that feel aligned, steps that seem obvious in ways they didn't before. This is critical to understand. Urgency often blocks clarity. When we are desperate, we cannot think clearly. When we are panicked, we cannot perceive accurately. The reduction of urgency is not reduction of care. It is the creation of space for wisdom to operate. And wisdom always precedes sustainable wealth. You may also have noticed that conversations and opportunities have begun appearing with unusual frequency. People mentioning things that align with what you've been thinking. Information arriving exactly when you needed it. Connections forming that feel orchestrated rather than random. These are not coincidences. These are alignments becoming visible. When heaven prepares to release provision, it begins coordinating elements you cannot coordinate yourself. People, timing, information, access, all of these start moving into position, and you notice it. You notice because your discernment has been sharpened by the waiting. Another sign is that your tolerance for scarcity thinking has collapsed. The mindsets that once felt normal now feel unbearable. The conversations about lack that once seemed realistic now seem limiting. The perspectives that once kept you grounded now feel like cages. This shift can be disorienting because you may feel disconnected from people who still operate from scarcity. Their fears no longer resonate. Their limitations no longer apply. Not because you've become arrogant, but because your frequency has changed, and frequency determines what you can tolerate. When God prepares to release abundance, He removes your tolerance for lack-based thinking. He makes the old mindset uncomfortable, so you don't try to bring it into the new season. What feels like internal tension is actually internal upgrade. Chosen one. If these signs are present in your life, they are not random. They are confirmation. Confirmation that the season is shifting. Confirmation that provision is approaching. Confirmation that what you've sensed is accurate. There are additional signs I want to mention because they often go unnoticed, but they are equally significant. You may have noticed a growing ability to be present. Your mind doesn't wander as much to past regrets or future anxieties. You can sit in the current moment without the restless need to escape it. This present moment awareness is not coincidental. It is the result of your spirit settling into trust. When trust increases, presence increases. When you genuinely believe that provision is coming, you stop constantly scanning the horizon for it. You may also have noticed that your sleep has changed. Perhaps you fall asleep more easily now. Perhaps you wake with more peace. Perhaps the anxious thoughts that used to chase you into the night have quieted. Sleep is one of the most honest indicators of our spiritual state. When the spirit is at war, sleep becomes difficult. When the spirit is at peace, sleep becomes natural. If your sleep has improved, your spirit is telling you something. Another sign appears in how you handle setbacks. Small disappointments that would have devastated you before now roll off more easily. Obstacles that would have triggered panic now trigger problem solving. You've developed resilience that wasn't there before, and that resilience is preparation for stewardship. Provision always comes with challenges. The ability to handle challenges without losing your peace is what allows you to sustain provision. You may have noticed that certain desires have faded while others have intensified. Superficial desires, things that would have impressed others but not served your purpose, have become less interesting. But desires that align with your calling have become clearer, stronger, more defined. This refinement of desire is not random. God removes distracting wants so that aligned wants can receive full attention. There is also often a physical sign that accompanies spiritual shift. A feeling of lightness, a sense that a weight has been lifted even when circumstances haven't changed. You might stand straighter, breathe more deeply, feel more comfortable in your own body. These physical shifts are your body responding to what your spirit already knows. The heaviness of waiting is lifting because the waiting is ending. But perhaps you've wondered why it took so long, why the waiting stretched further than you expected, why the delays accumulated when you felt ready years ago. This question deserves an honest answer because unanswered questions leave room for lies to fill the gaps. Hear this clearly, anointed one. The delay was not denial, and the timing was not punishment. What felt like being held back was actually being held safe. There is a difference between being delayed and being preserved. Delay drains you. Preservation protects you. Delay feels empty. Preservation feels full, even when nothing visible is happening. What you experienced was preservation, not delay. Heaven was guarding you from becoming visible before you were fortified. I need you to understand this principle deeply because it reframes everything. Visibility without stability is dangerous. If you had received what you prayed for before you were prepared for it, the weight of it would have crushed you instead of crowned you. The very thing you asked for would have become the thing that destroyed you. Increase without grounding destroys more people than lack ever could. I've watched this happen. I've seen people receive wealth before they had the character to steward it, the discernment to protect it, or the humility to handle it. And without exception, that premature provision created crisis instead of blessing. Not because provision is bad, but because timing is everything. I had to learn this the hard way. There was a season when I prayed for acceleration, not realizing that acceleration would have exposed parts of me that were not yet healed. I thought I was asking for progress. I thought I was asking for blessing. But heaven heard what I was really asking for: exposure. I wasn't ready for, responsibility I couldn't yet carry, visibility that would have magnified weaknesses I hadn't addressed. And what felt like silence from God was actually restraint from God. What felt like being ignored was actually being protected. Looking back now with the clarity that hindsight provides, I can see exactly what I was being protected from. I can see the opportunities that looked right but would have hollowed me out. I can see the doors that seemed golden but led to rooms I wasn't equipped to survive. God did not slow me down to punish me. He slowed me down to spare me. There is something else I need you to understand about timing. God's delays are never random. They are never careless. They are never forgetful. Every day that passed while you waited was a day where something was being arranged, adjusted, or aligned. Connections were being formed that you didn't know about. People were being moved into positions where they would eventually intersect with your path. Resources were being gathered that would arrive at precisely the right moment. Circumstances were being orchestrated that you couldn't see from where you were standing. The delay wasn't empty time. The delay was assembly time. God was assembling what you would need for the season you were entering. And assembly takes longer than we want because God doesn't cut corners. He doesn't rush quality. He doesn't sacrifice stability for speed. I've watched people who received provision before assembly was complete. They got the resources but not the connections. They got the money but not the wisdom. They got the opportunity but not the support system. And inevitably they struggled to sustain what they received because the supporting infrastructure wasn't in place. God protected you from that. The waiting wasn't just about preparing you internally. It was about preparing the environment you're stepping into externally. Both had to be ready. Both had to align. And now both are ready. Chosen one. Your story follows the same pattern. The years that felt like delay were years where invisible work was happening. Work on your character. Work on your discernment. Work on your capacity. Work on the foundation that would need to hold what was coming. That work is complete now, or nearly complete. And the closeness you feel is the closeness of completion. The preparation has done its job. The foundation is ready. The vessel has been reinforced. What comes now will not crush you. It will crown you. Your sensitivity has increased because you survived pressure that would have broken a less prepared vessel. The reason you feel deeper, see sharper, and sense misalignment faster than others is because your spirit was trained through waiting. Waiting does not waste you when it is guided by heaven. It strengthens discernment. It sharpens humility. It teaches you to listen instead of react. That is not lost time. That is investment time. And investments mature. What was invested in you during the waiting is now mature enough to produce return. You may have noticed that your discernment operates differently now. You sense when something is off without needing external evidence. You feel hesitation in your body before your mind catches up. You know when a person, an opportunity, or a direction is misaligned, even when everything looks right on the surface. This sensitivity is not paranoia, it is refinement. God trains His chosen ones to recognize alignment and misalignment quickly, because hesitation at the wrong door can save years of recovery. When your discernment increases, your tolerance for compromise decreases. And decreased tolerance for compromise protects wealth better than any strategy ever could. Your relationship with gratitude has also deepened, not the surface-level gratitude that thanks God only after things improve, but the kind that recognizes provision forming even before it manifests. You've begun to thank God for closed doors that spared you, for delays that protected you, for silence that strengthened you. This grounded gratitude is not just spiritual practice, it is positioning. Gratitude positions you to receive, entitlement positions you to lose, and you have shifted from entitlement to gratitude without anyone having to teach you. The waiting taught you, the process taught you, and now that teaching has become foundation. There has also been a shift in how you operate. You are no longer operating from survival, you are operating from positioning. Survival is reactive, positioning is intentional. Survival grabs whatever is available. Positioning waits for what is aligned. This shift changes everything about how provision comes to you. When you operate from survival, you attract survival-level opportunities. When you operate from positioning, you attract positioned-level opportunities. The caliber of what approaches you is determined by the posture you carry, and your posture has changed. Chosen one. The internal transformation that preceded this moment was not accidental. Every shift in your thinking, every deepening of your discernment, every increase in your patience was preparation, and preparation completed is provision released. This is the place where many people become unsettled, even frightened, not because something is wrong, but because something is no longer familiar. This is the space where the old version of life has loosened its grip, but the new structure has not fully materialized yet. You may feel it, the in-between, the threshold, the strange suspension between what was and what is about to be. And if you're honest, this space can feel uncomfortable because there's nothing solid to stand on. The old ground has shifted, the new ground hasn't fully formed. This discomfort is not a sign of problems, it is a sign of transition, and transition always feels unsettling because the human system craves certainty. We want to know what's next, we want to see where we're going, we want guarantees before we step forward. But God often works in the space between knowing and seeing. He asks us to trust before we understand, to step before we're certain, to believe before there's evidence, and that asking is not cruelty, it is intimacy. He wants faith, not just agreement. He wants trust, not just compliance. The temptation in this space is to revert, to go back to what you know, even if it no longer fits, just to feel grounded again. The old patterns may call to you. The old mindsets may seem comfortable by comparison. The old relationships may feel easier than the uncertainty of new ones. But reverting to what God already closed will not bring peace. It will bring confusion. It will create friction, because you no longer fit there. You've outgrown it. And trying to squeeze back into something you've outgrown always feels suffocating. Your nervous system may feel restless in this space. That's normal. Your body remembers urgency, even when your spirit has outgrown it. The restlessness you feel is not a call to rush. It is your system recalibrating to a new rhythm, a rhythm that doesn't require panic to feel alive, a rhythm that can be still without being passive. You may also notice that prayer feels different now, less frantic, less transactional, less focused on begging for outcomes. Instead, prayer has become more relational, more about alignment than requests, more about presence than provision. That shift in prayer is significant. When prayer becomes relational instead of survival-based, heaven responds differently, not just with relief, but with depth, not just with answers, but with intimacy. And intimacy with God is the foundation that sustains everything else. Chosen one, do not rush to fill this space with activity or noise. Do not manufacture urgency just because stillness feels unfamiliar. This space is sacred. It is the space where the final adjustments happen, where the last pieces of preparation lock into place, where the transition from waiting to receiving completes itself. Stay present here, stay attentive, stay surrendered, not passive but receptive. What is forming in this space will not require force. It will emerge naturally when the timing is complete. There is something else I need to address about this transitional space. Many people in this phase experience a kind of identity confusion, not about who they are fundamentally, but about how to operate. The old ways no longer work, but the new ways aren't fully developed yet. This confusion is normal. It's part of the transition. You've spent years developing survival-based patterns of thinking and behaving. Those patterns were necessary. They kept you going when resources were scarce. But now those same patterns can become obstacles if you carry them into the new season. For example, the habit of saying yes to every opportunity because you couldn't afford to miss anything. That served you in scarcity, but in abundance, saying yes to everything leads to scattered focus and diminished impact. You'll need to learn to be selective, which feels risky after years of grabbing whatever was available. Or the habit of working constantly because rest felt like falling behind. That served you in survival mode, but in stewardship mode, rest becomes essential for clear thinking and wise decisions. You'll need to learn that rest is productive, not lazy. That's a hard shift after years of equating constant motion with progress. Or the habit of handling everything yourself because you couldn't afford to trust anyone else. That served you when resources were limited and mistakes couldn't be absorbed, but in abundance, trying to handle everything yourself becomes a limitation. You'll need to learn to delegate, to trust, to build teams. That's difficult after years of self-reliance. These habit shifts don't happen overnight. They require intentional attention. They require grace with yourself as you learn new patterns. They require patience with the process of becoming someone who operates from abundance rather than scarcity. Chosen one. The confusion you feel in this space is growth confusion, not failure confusion. It's the disorientation that comes with genuine transformation, and it will resolve as the new patterns establish themselves. Let me give you practical guidance for how to respond in this moment, because understanding is important, but response is what translates understanding into outcome. First, do not force what is approaching. Provision that comes from God does not require manipulation, striving, or anxious effort. It requires alignment. When you are aligned, provision finds you. When you are misaligned, provision passes by even when it's close. The temptation when wealth feels close is to reach for it, to try to make it happen faster, to help God by adding your own effort to His timing. But forced provision is unstable provision. What you grab often slips away. What God places in your hands remains. Your job is not to manufacture breakthrough. Your job is to remain in position for breakthrough. Remaining in position means staying aligned, staying faithful, staying peaceful, even when nothing visible has changed yet. Second, protect your focus and your energy. This is a season where what you pay attention to matters intensely. Distractions are not just annoying in this season, they are dangerous. They can pull you out of alignment at the exact moment. Alignment is most critical. Guard what enters your eyes, your ears, your conversations. Limit exposure to voices that create doubt. Limit consumption of content that feeds anxiety. Limit time in environments that drain your faith. This is not avoidance of reality. This is stewardship of capacity. Third, honor what is already in your hands before asking for more. Stewardship precedes expansion. When God sees that you honor what is in your hands, He trusts you with more. This applies not only to finances, but to time, relationships, opportunities, and influence. Look at what you currently have. Are you stewarding it with intention? Are you caring for it with gratitude? Are you managing it with wisdom? These questions matter because God measures readiness by stewardship, not by desire. The person who mismanages $100 will mismanage 1,000. The person who neglects small opportunities will neglect large ones. The person who dishonors current relationships will dishonor future ones. Stewardship is the evidence of readiness. Fourth, remain attentive but not anxious. Attentiveness and anxiety are not the same thing. Attentiveness is awake and peaceful. Anxiety is awake and agitated. God asks for attentiveness, not anxiety. Being attentive means you are watching for instruction, listening for direction, ready to move when movement is called for. But it doesn't mean you're constantly scanning for problems or obsessively checking for signs. Attentiveness trusts while it watches. Anxiety worries while it waits. Fifth, let peace be your confirmation. In this season, peace is not just a nice feeling. Peace is a diagnostic tool. When something is aligned, you feel peace even if it's challenging. When something is misaligned, you feel disturbance even if it looks perfect. Use peace to evaluate opportunities, relationships, and decisions. If peace is absent, pause. If peace is present, proceed. This simple filter will protect you from more mistakes than any strategy or advice could. Chosen one, your response in this moment matters, not because God is testing you harshly, but because the ground you're standing on is sacred. What you do here shapes what arrives next. Respond with faith, respond with patience, respond with the wisdom that waiting has built in you. Let me add a few more practical instructions, because this moment deserves specific guidance. Practice gratitude intentionally. Not just when good things happen, but as a daily discipline. Write down what you're grateful for. Speak it out loud. Let gratitude become the atmosphere you breathe in. Gratitude positions the heart to receive. It opens doors that striving cannot open. It attracts provision in ways that worry never could. Be careful with your words in this season. What you speak carries weight. Doubt spoken aloud has power. Fear articulated gains strength, but faith spoken also has power. Hope articulated gains strength. Choose your words carefully. Speak what you believe, not what you fear. Let your mouth align with where you're going, not where you've been. Guard your relationships. Be aware of who you're spending time with and what those interactions produce. Some relationships feed your faith, others drain it. Some conversations lift you, others pull you down. You don't have unlimited relational capacity. Invest it where it produces growth, peace, and alignment. Stay in motion, but let the motion be aligned. Don't stop working, don't stop preparing, don't stop showing up, but let your activity be guided by wisdom, not desperation. There's a difference between productive motion and anxious motion. Productive motion moves you forward. Anxious motion just exhausts you. Ask yourself regularly, is this activity aligned with where I'm going, or is it just filling time? And finally, expect good things, not as wishful thinking, but as faith in action. When you expect good things, you position yourself to recognize them when they arrive. When you expect problems, you often create them through your own defensive reactions. Expectation shapes perception, and perception shapes experience. Expect that God is faithful. Expect that provision is coming. Expect that the closeness you feel is accurate. You are no longer standing at the edge. You are stepping into the current. The shift you felt was not preparation for something far off. It was preparation for now. Let me describe what is approaching so you can recognize it when it arrives, not to create expectation that boxes God in, but to help your spirit recognize what your mind might otherwise dismiss. Provision is going to begin arriving with less effort than you're used to, not without work, but without the strain that characterized previous seasons. The same actions will produce different results. The same effort will yield different outcomes. This is not magic. This is alignment meeting timing. Doors that were closed will begin to open without you having to force them. Conversations will lead somewhere instead of circling. Ideas will find traction instead of resistance. Resources will appear closer to when they're needed, instead of always arriving late. But this provision will require a different posture from you. It will require you to receive without the old habits of survival, without grabbing, without hoarding, without the fear that what came will immediately leave. Wealth that comes from God is not just money, it is capacity. The capacity to respond without strain, to give without depletion, to build without burning out, to solve problems without being consumed by them. That kind of wealth is approaching you. You were not shaped for survival. That was never your destiny. You were shaped for stewardship, for influence, for building things that outlast you, for creating stability that others can rest in. The survival season served its purpose. It taught you endurance. It developed your strength, but it was never meant to be permanent. What comes now is the stewardship season, the authority season, the building season, and it requires everything the survival season taught you but applies it differently. Strength will still be needed, but it will be strength for building, not just for enduring. Endurance will still be necessary, but it will be endurance for maintaining, not just for surviving. Let me describe more specifically what this season will require from you, because entering a new season without understanding its requirements leads to struggle that could have been avoided. This season will require you to think longer term than you have before. Survival thinking is short term by necessity. When you're just trying to make it through the week, you can't think about next year. But stewardship thinking is long term. It considers impact. It considers sustainability. It considers legacy. You will need to train your mind to think in longer time horizons. This season will require you to make decisions based on values rather than immediate returns. Not every profitable opportunity is an aligned opportunity. Not every quick win serves your ultimate purpose. You will need the discernment to say no to good things so you can say yes to the right things. This requires clarity about your values that survival mode never demanded. This season will require you to lead, not just participate. Provision brings responsibility. Increase brings influence. You will find yourself in rooms where your voice matters, where your decisions affect others, where your leadership is needed. This is not pressure, this is purpose, but it requires you to step into authority you may not have fully exercised before. This season will require you to maintain what you receive, not just acquire it. Acquisition is exciting, maintenance is mundane, but maintenance is what separates temporary blessing from generational wealth. You will need disciplines of stewardship that survival mode never required. Budgeting, planning, protecting. These are not glamorous, but they are essential. This season will require you to give differently than you have before. When you have more is expected, not because God is demanding, but because generosity flows naturally from abundance. You will be positioned to bless others in ways you couldn't before, and that positioning is part of the purpose of the provision. This season will also test you in new ways, not the tests of scarcity, but the tests of abundance. Can you remain humble when you have more than enough? Can you stay generous when hoarding feels safer? Can you keep God first when resources make self-reliance possible? These tests are different from what you've faced, but they are equally important. You will notice that your vision for the future feels both simpler and larger at the same time. Simpler because you're no longer chasing everything that glitters. Larger because what remains feels genuinely meaningful. When God narrows your focus, He's not limiting you, He's refining you. And refined focus attracts refined opportunity. The authority you now carry will show up in your decisions, in your boundaries, in your willingness to say no without guilt. Authority doesn't shout. Authority stands. And you will find yourself standing more firmly than you ever have before. Chosen one, what unfolds next will not require force. It will respond to the authority you now carry. It will recognize the preparation you've completed. It will honor the faithfulness you've demonstrated. Walk with intention now. Speak with clarity. Choose with alignment. Heaven is not watching to see if you'll fail. Heaven is partnering with you to see what you'll steward. Let me speak to something that may be a quiet fear. The fear that what feels close will somehow slip away. That the shift you've sensed will reverse itself. That you'll wake up tomorrow and the closeness will have disappeared. Hear this clearly. What has shifted cannot unshift. Not because you're powerful enough to hold it in place, but because God has moved in ways that don't reverse themselves. What He has done in you cannot be undone by doubt, by delay, or by difficulty. The preparation that was completed was completed. The foundation that was laid was laid. The internal changes that occurred are permanent changes, not temporary feelings. You are not the same person you were when this process started, and you cannot go back to being that person even if you tried. This is why the closeness feels so real. It is real. It is the product of actual spiritual work, not wishful thinking. It is the result of genuine transformation, not positive self-talk. The closeness will become presence. The sensing will become seeing. The perceiving will become possessing. This is the trajectory that has already been set. And trajectories, once established by heaven, don't change direction based on your fears. There may be moments of doubt in the days ahead. Moments when the old voices try to reassert themselves. Moments when fear whispers that you imagined everything, that nothing has really changed, that the closeness was just emotion. When those moments come, return to what you know. Return to the shifts you've observed in yourself. Return to the discernment that has developed. Return to the peace that has settled.
These are not feelings, they are evidence, and evidence doesn't disappear just because doubt raises its voice. I want to give you a practical tool for those moments of doubt. When fear speaks, ask yourself this question: am I the same person I was a year ago? The answer will always be no, and that change is evidence. Evidence of God's work, evidence of real transformation, evidence that what you've experienced is not imagination. Fear wants you to forget the journey. Fear wants you to believe that nothing has changed. But the journey was real, the changes were real, the growth was real, and reality doesn't evaporate because doubt has a loud voice. Another tool is to remember specific moments, moments when you felt God's presence, moments when provision arrived unexpectedly, moments when doors opened without explanation, moments when peace settled when anxiety should have been present. These moments are anchors. When doubt tries to pull you into its current, these anchors hold you in place. Write them down if you haven't already. Create a record of God's faithfulness in your life, not as religious duty but as practical preparation. Doubt will come, and when it comes you need evidence to stand on. The record of faithfulness becomes that evidence. Chosen one, you are not approaching something temporary. You are stepping into something permanent. A new season that will have its own challenges, its own growth requirements, its own opportunities for faithfulness. But a new season nonetheless, a season that is genuinely different from everything that came before. The closeness you feel is the closeness of arrival. Not the arrival of a moment, but the arrival of a season. And seasons don't come and go in days. They establish themselves. They produce their fruit. They run their course. You are entering a season of fruitfulness, a season of capacity, a season of stewardship. And this season will be long enough, deep enough, and significant enough to change everything that follows. Chosen one. As this moment comes to a close, let this truth settle deeply into your spirit. Nothing you have sensed, nothing you have felt shifting, nothing you have perceived approaching has been accidental. Heaven has already moved. What you are standing in right now is not confusion. It is confirmation. You are in your kairos moment, your divinely appointed time where preparation meets permission and alignment meets release. The waiting did its work, the refining finished its assignment, and the provision that was promised is already in motion. I speak peace over your mind, the kind of peace that doesn't need circumstances to validate it, the kind that remains steady whether evidence is visible or not, the kind that has learned to trust before seeing. I speak clarity over your decisions, the wisdom to know when to move and when to wait, the discernment to recognize alignment and misalignment quickly, the courage to say no to good things so you can say yes to the right things. I speak strength over your spirit, not the strength of striving, but the strength of standing, the strength that holds position without anxiety, the strength that trusts without demanding proof. I speak provision over your life, not provision that arrives with strain, but provision that arrives with peace, not provision that you had to manufacture, but provision that God orchestrated, not provision that depletes as soon as it arrives, but provision that multiplies because it was stewarded with wisdom. May doors open without striving, may resources appear without strain, may favor rest upon you in ways that leave no doubt this was orchestrated by heaven alone. May the closeness you felt become the presence you experience. May the sensing become seeing. May the approaching become arriving. Stay faithful, stay aligned, stay grateful. What is unfolding now will not require force. It will respond to obedience and trust. Carry this awareness with reverence. Guard your alignment. Walk gently but confidently into what is being revealed. And if this word has resonated with your spirit, you may quietly mark this moment. Subscribe to remain connected. Leave a comment with 777 and the city or nation where you're watching from as a sacred acknowledgement that you recognize the shift and are choosing to stay present for what God is bringing forth. Go forward in peace, chosen one. What feels different is real. What feels closer is approaching. What feels imminent is arriving. Your wealth is not a distant dream anymore. It is a present reality forming in front of you. And this is only the beginning. What you're stepping into is not a peak you'll eventually descend from. It's a plateau you'll build upon. This provision is not a one-time event. It's the beginning of a pattern of alignment producing abundance, a pattern of faithfulness meeting provision, a pattern that will continue as long as you continue to steward what you receive. The closeness you feel right now is not the end of the story. It's the opening chapter of a new volume, a volume where provision is not the exception but the norm, where abundance is not the surprise but the expectation, where wealth is not the distant hope but the present reality. You have waited long enough. You have prepared thoroughly enough. You have grown deeply enough. The time has come, and what has come will not leave. It will stay. It will grow. It will multiply. Go forward in peace, chosen one. Your moment is here.